Number 7. Lindsay Hawker. After graduating with a first-class honours degree from the University of Leeds, 22-year-old Lindsay Hawker of Coventry, England, decided to teach English for a year in Tokyo, started in October of 2006. On her train ride home from work, she met Tatsuya Ichihashi, aged 28. He approached the young woman asking if she was his English teacher, which she wasn't. After Hawker got off the train, Ichihashi ran after her as she cycled home and asked for a glass of water upon reaching her residence. She felt sorry for him and agreed, but as a precaution, also introduced him to the 2 female teachers with whom she was sharing her accommodation. While there, Ichihashi drew a picture of Hawker, which he signed with his name, telephone number, and email address. The pair agreed to a private English lesson, and on March the 24th of 2007, they met at a cafe before taking a taxi to Ichihashi's apartment. Within a few days, Hawker was reported missing after she'd failed to contact her family or show up for her classes. The authorities retraced her actions leading up to the disappearance, and on March the 26th, officers arrived outside of Ichihashi's apartment building. Ichihashi, a black belt martial artist obsessed with physical fitness, fled barefooted and evaded capture by jumping from the stairwell and then running through the streets. On the balcony of his apartment, the police found Hawker's naked body in a bathtub, buried in a mixture of compost soil and sand. Ichihashi had abused the young woman and subjected her to a prolonged and brutal beating before strangling her to death. In spite of a massive manhunt and rewards offered for information leading to his capture, he was on the run for over 2 years, a time during which he changed his appearance through plastic surgery. Ichihashi was finally arrested in November of 2009 in Osaka as he was trying to get to Okinawa. He admitted to abusing and killing Hawker, but even though her family asked for the death penalty, he was sentenced to life in prison in 2011 as he didn't have a criminal record and it was deemed he could still be rehabilitated. Number 6. Joji Obara. Joji Obara is one of Japan's most notorious criminals, having abused hundreds of women, 2 of whom he killed in what were cases of international infamy. Obara's modus operandi involved drugging his victims, then abducting and abusing them while they were unconscious. He preferred white women because they were viewed as a status symbol, but his victims hailed both from Japanese and Western backgrounds. He documented his crimes, to which he referred as conquest play, and the police recovered videotapes related to at least 400 attacks. In 1992, Obara was responsible for the death of Carita Ridgway, aged 22, an Australian model from Perth, who worked as a bar hostess in the Ginza area of Tokyo. The hostess term was interpreted in the parameters of a modern geisha, with strict rules against touching, the women being paid to engage in conversation, dance, and light their patrons cigarettes, as well as for singing karaoke or dancing. Ridgway had accepted a lift by Obara. He drugged her and she suffered chloroform-induced liver failure and complete loss of brain function that ultimately led to her death. Obara, using the alias Nishita, had taken her to an emergency room claiming she'd suffered food poisoning and then fled. On July the 1st of 2000, Tokyo hostess Lucy Blackman, a 21-year-old native of England, disappeared after going on a paid date with a customer. As the investigation progressed and gained media exposure, more women came forward, and Obara became a suspect. Blackman's body was found in February of 2001, buried in a shallow grave in a seaside cave roughly 30 miles south of Tokyo. It was discovered less than a mile from Obara's apartment. She had been cut into 10 pieces and placed inside separate bags with her head encased in concrete. The advanced state of decomposition made determining the cause of death impossible. Obara was indicted for drugging, abusing, and killing Blackman, but maintained his innocence. Prosecutors deemed the evidence to have been insufficient to charge him for the Blackman killing, but he was sentenced to life imprisonment for Ridgway's manslaughter and abuse, which was on videotape, as well as other cases of abuse. Number 5. Shigeharu Shirai. Yakuza is an umbrella term used to define Japan's most powerful criminal organizations that trace their origins to the age of the Tokugawa shogunate, from the early 17th century to the latter half of the 19th century. Originally operating as marginalized groups of peddlers and gamblers, the organizations grew into billion-dollar enterprises. operated on both sides of the law. They adhere to a strict code of conduct, and their rituals, often shrouded in mystery, include full-body tattoos and cutting off the tip of a finger, typically the pinky, to atone for an offense. These aspects of the Yakuza lifestyle in 2018 became the basis for the arrest of a former Yakuza boss who'd spent 14 years on the run. In 2003, Shigeharu Shirai had allegedly gunned down the head of a rival faction and fled Japan as the police called for his arrest. He settled in Thailand, where he married a local woman and kept a low profile into his early 70s. Then a Thai local, fascinated by Shirai's appearance, snapped some photos of him as he was playing a street-side game of checkers with his back and chest tattoos as well as his missing pinky in full view. The photos went viral and reached Japanese law enforcement. They then collaborated with Thai authorities for Shirai's arrest, and according to police spokesperson General Wirakai Songmeta, the suspect admitted that he was the leader of the Yakuza subgang Kodakai. Number 4. Yuka Takaoka. 21-year-old Yuka Takaoka became a social media sensation following the events of May the 23rd of 2019, when she stabbed her boyfriend because of jealous rage. While working as the manager of a hostess club, she'd met Phoenix Luna, a bar host himself. In their respective job capacities, they were expected to boost sales by flirting with patrons and encouraging them to keep drinking. Takaoka and Luna had moved in together in an apartment in Tokyo's Shinjuku ward. Within 3 days of the move, an argument broke out between them after Takaoka had found another woman's photo on Luna's phone. It ended with her stabbing him twice and slashing his abdomen open. A since viral photo would show Takaoka sitting on the floor next to his bleed-in body as she was being questioned by a police officer. She was calmly smoking a cigarette while talking to someone on the phone. Another viral photo showed her smiling in the back of a police car. Users on multiple social media platforms became fascinated and infatuated with Takaoka, likening her to an anime character, while speculating on her jealous and obsessive nature. Some even created fan art inspired by her and the attack, while others claimed she was too beautiful to be a suspect. Takaoka was charged with attempted murder, but Luna, who subsequently recovered from his injuries, claimed he held no grudge and even credited the attack with boosting his popularity at the club where he worked. Number 3. Assassination of Icho Ito. On April 17th of 2007, while campaigning for re-election to his 4th term as mayor of Nagasaki, politician Icho Ito was assassinated by a leading member of the Sushinkai Yakuza. The group was associated with Yamaguchi-gumi, the country's largest and most powerful Yakuza syndicate. As he was getting out of the car in front of his campaign office near Nagasaki Station, Ito was gunned down at point-blank range by Tetsuya Shiru. He was rushed to a hospital and into surgery, but eventually succumbed to blood loss. Shiru was quickly subdued by law enforcement and consequently sentenced to life in prison. It was reported that Shiru had shot Ito out of a personal grudge after the city had refused to compensate him for a car accident. In 2003, while the victim was mayor, the Yakuza boss had damaged his car driving in a hole dug for public works, but his insurance claim was denied. However, there were also reports that Shiru had assassinated Ito because a construction company affiliated with his organization had been denied a contract. The high-profile shooting hadn't been sanctioned by the Yamaguchi-gumi or by other Suishinkai leaders. The groups detested the scrutiny it brought on them, with the latter voluntarily disbanding following the assassination. Today's topic was requested by TV Guy, Alice Hughes, Akio5, and the PlayStation Dude. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Kyoto Animation arson attack. One of the deadliest massacres to have occurred in Japan since the end of World War II was the arson attack at Kyoto Animation Studio 1 on July the 18th of 2019. The perpetrator was 41-year-old Shinji Aoba, who'd accused the studio of plagiarizing his novels. He entered the building in the Fushimi ward of Kyoto with 11 gallons of gasoline, which he is believed to have carried inside on a platform trolley. Aoba then doused the area and some of the workers inside with the highly flammable liquid, reportedly shouting, "Die! as he set them alight. The blaze spread rapidly, trapping many inside the building while others rushed into the streets engulfed in flames. Since it was classified as a small office building, the studio didn't have sprinklers or fire hydrants. Most of the victims were consumed by flames rather than carbon monoxide poisoning, and some were so badly burnt that they could only be identified through DNA testing. 36 people died in the inferno, either directly or as a result of it, while 33 others were injured. Aoba had also set himself on fire but didn't perish in the attack as he had originally intended. The police apprehended him in the street, a few hundred feet from the studio, where he'd collapsed with life-threatening burns. He took responsibility for the attack, offering baseless claims of plagiarism as motivation. After recovering and receiving treatment for his burns, he was formally indicted for murder and other charges on December the 16th of 2020. Aoba suffered from an unspecified mental illness, and it could be taken into consideration towards him being given life imprisonment instead of the capital punishment. Number 1. Satoru Nomura. As the 5th president of the Fukuoka prefecture-based Yakuza group Kudokai, Satoru Nomura led one of the most violent organizations in the country. Unlike other syndicates, the Kudokai was designated a particularly nefarious group for its lack of hesitation in attacking civilians by gunning them down or bombing their homes. At the height of his power in 2008, Nomura had around 1,200 members under his command. However, the long-standing campaign led by law enforcement against his reign of terror reached an unprecedented conclusion on August the 24th of 2021. On that date, Nomura, a man in his early 70s, became the first senior Yakuza member to be sentenced to death. Throughout his extensive criminal activity, Nomura was arrested in connection to the murder of Kinihiro Kajiwara, a former fishermen's union leader. He was also arrested for ordering an attack in which a former police inspector probing the Kudokai was shot in the leg. Additionally, he was held responsible for the stabbing and attempted murder of a nurse at a cosmetic surgery clinic after he was reportedly displeased with her attitude and result of his operation. Nomura was also charged on May the 22nd of 2015 for the stabbing and attempted murder of a dentist. According to updates on the case, Nomura was appealing the death sentence after he'd reportedly issued a public threat to the presiding judge, claiming that he'd regret sending him to the gallows. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on one of the links below for more videos.